Ethan Reed was a man who had everything: fortune, fame, and a mansion so large that his footsteps echoed in its silence. Yet, despite all his success, his heart often felt empty. One late evening, while returning from a business call, Ethan heard a faint noise coming from the servants' kitchen. Curious, he followed the sound, soft rustling, almost like someone trying not to be heard. As he peeked through the doorway, he froze. There, under the dim yellow light, sat Maria, his maid, a frail woman in her 30s, quietly eating scraps from a half-finished plate she'd pulled from the trash. Her hands trembled as she lifted each bite, her eyes darting to the door, terrified of being caught. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. She hadn't even noticed him standing there, she was too busy whispering a small prayer of thanks over cold leftovers. He could have turned away. Most millionaires would have. But something about her humility pierced through his pride. He saw hunger, not just for food, but for dignity, for hope. Instead of scolding her, Ethan quietly stepped back and watched for a moment longer. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed of the waste, the excess, the blindness wealth had caused. That night, he couldn't sleep. The image of Maria hiding to eat leftovers replayed in his mind again and again. And by morning, he knew he had to do something that would change both of their lives forever. Days turned into weeks, and something quietly changed inside Ethan Reed's mansion. The air felt lighter, warmer. Maria smiled more often now, and Ethan found himself looking forward to their shared breakfasts, humble meals that somehow tasted richer than any luxury he'd known before. One morning, as he was leaving for work, Maria approached him holding a wrinkled envelope. "Sir," she said softly, "this came from my home, from my son." Ethan smiled. "That's wonderful. What does it say?" Maria hesitated, then began to read, her voice trembling. "Dear Mama, thank you for the money. My sister got medicine, and I can go back to school now. I pray every night for the man who helped you. Please tell him he saved us." Her words broke something open in Ethan's heart. He turned away for a moment, blinking back tears. "You never told me your son was sick," he said quietly. Maria lowered her gaze. "I didn't want pity, sir. I just wanted to work with dignity." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding more than words could express. That evening, he made a call to his lawyer, his accountant, and his personal assistant. The next day, Maria found an envelope waiting on the kitchen counter. Inside was a letter from Ethan and a folded document. "Maria," it read, "I've set up a trust fund for your children's education and health care. You've taught me more about humanity than any boardroom ever could. Thank you for reminding me what real wealth means." Maria clutched the letter to her chest and wept. That night, when Ethan walked through his mansion, he didn't feel like a millionaire anymore. He felt something far greater, human. News of Ethan Reed's quiet generosity somehow began to spread. It started with a post from one of his kitchen staff who wrote online, "Our boss treated our maid like family, and changed her life forever." Within hours, the story caught fire. People from across the city began commenting, sharing, and praising the millionaire who'd chosen kindness over ego. At first, Ethan felt uncomfortable with the attention. He hadn't done it to be seen. But when he started receiving letters from strangers, single mothers, janitors, waiters, thanking him for inspiring them, something shifted inside him again. He called a meeting at his company headquarters. Hundreds of employees filled the auditorium, curious about what their normally private CEO had to say. "I used to think success was measured by numbers," Ethan began. "But I was wrong. True success is measured by hearts you touch, not profits you make." He paused, scanning the faces in the room. "Starting today, we're launching the Human First initiative, free meals for all employees, education aid for their families, and health support for anyone in need." The room erupted in applause. Maria, standing quietly at the back, wiped tears from her eyes. In the following months, Ethan's company transformed. Productivity soared, but more importantly, compassion bloomed. Employees began helping one another, volunteering, and donating. What started with a single act of kindness now rippled across an entire community. One evening, Ethan returned home to find Maria setting the dinner table. She looked up and smiled. "You've changed so many lives, sir." Ethan shook his head gently. "No, Maria. You changed mine first." A year passed since that fateful night when Ethan had found Maria hiding in the kitchen. The mansion that once echoed with emptiness now buzzed with laughter, conversation, and life. Ethan had opened part of his estate to serve as a community kitchen, feeding hundreds of underprivileged families every week, an idea Maria had suggested. One cold winter morning, Maria entered Ethan's office with a small wooden box in her hands. "Sir," she said softly, "I wanted you to have this." Inside was a simple cross made from palm leaves and a photo of her children smiling wide. "They're healthy now," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "They're studying, because of you." Ethan looked at the photo for a long moment, his throat tight. "No, Maria. It's because of you. You never gave up, even when life gave you nothing." A week later, during the community kitchen's first anniversary celebration, Ethan stood before a crowd of volunteers, families, and employees. Cameras flashed, but his focus was on Maria, standing proudly beside her children who had finally come to live with her. "When I first saw Maria," he said into the microphone, "I saw a woman hiding to eat leftovers. What I didn't know was that I was the one starving, for purpose, for connection, for heart." The audience fell silent. "She fed me something no wealth ever could, compassion. And that's the kind of richness I wish for everyone here." As applause filled the air, Ethan smiled through tears. The millionaire who once measured life in profit had found his true wealth, in humanity, in kindness, and in one woman's unbroken spirit. And from that day on, Ethan's legacy wasn't built on business. It was built on love. The next morning, Ethan waited in the kitchen before anyone arrived. When Maria walked in, she froze, her eyes wide as she saw him standing there beside the same counter where she'd been the night before. For a moment, she looked like she might run. "Maria," Ethan said softly, "please, sit." Her hands trembled as she clutched her apron. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to steal. I was just hungry, Anne." Ethan raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "You didn't steal anything. You were eating what I threw away." His voice cracked slightly. "That's not your shame, Maria. It's mine." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't want anyone to know. I send most of my salary to my children back home. Sometimes, I can't afford enough food after rent." Ethan's chest tightened. He had always assumed his staff lived comfortably, but her words revealed how little he truly understood the people around him. "Maria," he said after a pause, "from now on, you'll eat the same meals I do. No more leftovers. And you're getting a raise, triple your salary." She stared at him, speechless. "Sir, I can't accept that." "You can. And you will." His tone was gentle, but firm. Then, he did something no one in his mansion had ever seen. He rolled up his sleeves, pulled 2 plates from the shelf, and began cooking breakfast himself. As they sat across from each other, eating in silence, Maria wept quietly. Ethan looked at her, not as a servant, but as a human being. For the first time in years, his mansion didn't feel empty. It felt alive, with warmth, humility, and something money had never bought him before, peace.